Even if DC Comics is starting to gain more widespread popularity with films like Wonder Woman and Aquaman, there's no denying that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is miles ahead of their biggest rival in nearly every regard. However, DC beats Marvel 99 times out of 100 when it comes to one key element of superhero storylines. Across comics, animation, television, and film, DC Comics has a collection of villains that are far more compelling than the vast majority of Marvel's baddies. Standing at the very top of DC's collection of incredible villains, or maybe cackling on top of a pile of them, is the clown prince of crime, the Joker.
I thought my jokes were bad.
After countless appearances across everything from blockbuster movies to radio dramas, the Joker is nothing short of the face of supervillainy. With this level of popularity, it's no surprise that a movie centering on the Joker's origins will premiere this October and feature the terrifically accomplished Joaquin Phoenix donning the iconic white makeup and elongated grin. Based on the teasers, it looks like this movie will be a pretty dark and bizarre film, which is appropriate considering the Joker's gleeful pursuit of mass destruction and suffering. Although, the Joker wasn't always so maniacal and grew into his role of Batman's polar opposite more than anything else. Much like the Dark Knight himself, today's Joker barely resembles the first version of the character, and his influence on the comic book industry is practically unmatched. From his humble beginnings to his many origin stories to his lasting impact on the series and superhero genre, here's everything you need to know about the Joker before the upcoming film provides a new take on the unhinged character. Even if it's hard to believe with the modern versions of the characters, the Joker wasn't created with the intent of being the philosophical opposite of Batman. In fact, he was originally supposed to be a one-off character out of a concern that a recurring villain would suggest that Batman was rather inept at detaining criminals. However, editor Whitney Ellsworth sensed the potential in the character and made sure he appeared in later issues of the original Batman series of comics, despite the original intent of the Joker's creators, Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Jerry Robinson. The first version of the character was a conniving and unstable serial killer who used his Joker venom to poison people while giving them disfiguring grins. The original Joker acted as an ultimate challenge for Batman, who was made out to be one of the greatest detectives alive in his early appearances. This 1940 to 1942 version of the Joker quickly faded away to match market trends, though. Once the comics industry learned that their products were much more popular with children than adults, the more mature and pulpier elements of most comic series disappeared almost overnight. This target audience shift resulted in the Joker becoming more of a prankster goofball than the eccentric mass murderer that defined his premier personality. The campier criminal would quickly become one of the most well-known versions of the Joker, and become the defining version of the character in his appearances during the Gold and Silver Age of comics. This version of the character would heavily influence Cesar Romero's take on the Joker in the 1960s Batman television series. As general interest in the Batman series began to wane, the Joker became deadlier and more sinister in an attempt to retain readership. The late 60s version of the Joker saw the character gain many of his most recognizable elements, like his lethal joy buzzers or deadly prop guns. The mid-1970s brought about the version of the Joker that most audiences are familiar with today. During the 70s and 80s, the Joker became more homicidal while retaining his over-the-top flair. Storylines in this era also began to focus more on the relationship between Batman and the Joker, and the clown becoming more of an agent of chaos than a clown-themed criminal looking to make some quick cash. Later in the 90s, the character would gain his most recognizable voice with Mark Hamill playing the character in Batman, the animated series cartoon. Finally, the Joker would cement himself as Batman's ideological rival with Heath Ledger's take on the character appearing in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Similar to Batman and other popular superheroes, the Joker's personality and drives changed substantially depending on the state of the comics industry and the creative team behind a project featuring the character. At this point, the Joker is more of a general collection of themes and aesthetics that creators can use to tell their own stories. This is why the evil Shogun version of the Joker that appeared in Batman Ninja and Flashpoint's Martha Wayne interpretation of the character are as valid and enjoyable as a more conventional presentation of the Joker. As the clown's most defining trait is his status as Batman's greatest enemy, every other character element can be dialed up or scaled back to fit the tone of the rest of the story. Of course, as Batman's nemesis, the Joker's origin story is as tragic as the hero's own. Nearly every version of the Joker's origin story uses some variation of a few central ideas. A down-on-his-luck man dons the Red Hood persona and starts stealing to either support himself and his pregnant wife or enrich his life. This doesn't last for long, though, as a confrontation with Batman results in the Joker's skin getting bleached, his loved ones inadvertently passing away, and Joker wanting to undermine Batman's status as a beacon of moral value. Then again, the Joker regularly claims to have a different backstory than the one viewers were initially presented with, and in fact cares very little about what events drove him to become a murdering madman. Sometimes, the Joker claims to be an average person who was one bad day away from becoming an agent of evil, and other times he styles himself as an immortal being that exists only to spread chaos. The Joker's blatant disregard for his own backstory is best seen in the Dark Knight film, where he gives multiple explanations for the scars that give him a permanent grin. It's implied that the Joker's disregard for humanity stems from how he gained these wounds, and yet the Joker is actively fabricating stories about them just to screw with people.
I don't want to kill you.
Unlike most other comic book villains, the Joker doesn't really care about his origins, and that's what makes him so enticing to audiences. In the film Avengers: Infinity War, a sizable part of the movie went into explaining Thanos' motivations for wanting to destroy half of all sentient life, and even going so far as to make him a sympathetic figure. In fact, Thanos is more of a lead character in Infinity War than any of the more established heroes, and this level of exploration into his character makes him one of the best villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You're not supposed to feel bad for the Joker or feel like his actions are justified. Sure, his origin is sometimes tragic, but there's no grander philosophy to his actions other than proving to himself and everyone else that whatever Batman represents is wrong. That's why the Joker is almost always presented as a response to Batman, or a consequence of Batman's actions in most of his backstories. The Joker exists as a means to test and potentially break Batman. In every Batman story the Joker appears in, he always tries to prove that Batman isn't as good or as capable of a person as what people think he is. In the original comics, where Batman is the world's greatest detective, the Joker repeatedly escapes capture and presents increasingly difficult mysteries for the Caped Crusader to solve. In the Christopher Nolan movies, the Joker tries to prove that people are inherently evil, as Batman has risen up as a symbol of humanity's goodness. The Joker always appears as a result of Batman's rise to prominence and opposes whatever themes or ideas Batman is meant to embody in a given work. He is a response to Batman both within the context of a story and the messages any given Batman story is trying to impart on the audience. The Joker only exists in any given story because Batman's success inadvertently creates the clown, which symbolizes the Joker's status as the ultimate pushback against whatever ideas Batman represents or is fighting for in a particular narrative. With an identity that is so closely tied to Batman's, it's no wonder that the Joker has influenced the Batman brand nearly as much as the Dark Knight himself. The Joker appears in nearly every new series involving Batman, and tends to be a key player in the strongest parts of each project. After all, it's pretty widely accepted that the Dark Knight film is the best of the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, or how Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker was the best thing to come out of the Batman Beyond animated series. As the antithesis of Batman, Joker often acts in a way for the story to crystallize the themes and challenges Bruce Wayne has to overcome to continue doing what he thinks is right. Heath Ledger's Joker makes Bruce Wayne realize that he can do more good for the world by having Batman become a symbol of goodness and virtue, and that he has to walk away from personally saving the day and taking down villains if he really wants to improve society. Similarly, the Joker forces Wayne to confront his failures and realize the value in the little bit of good he can bring to the world in the Killing Joke and Under the Red Hood storylines. The Joker always pushes Batman to either recommit to his ideals or reconsider what actions he can take going forward that best serve the people of Gotham. While most other villains in Batman present a physical or mental hurdle for Batman to clear, they don't force him to re-examine his core ideologies. For instance, most encounters with Dr. Freeze make Batman question the morality of stopping a man who is committing crimes to save his dying wife, but don't force Batman to consider his effect on and place in society. For instance, most encounters with Mr. Freeze make Batman question the morality of stopping a man who is committing crimes to save his dying wife, but doesn't force Batman to consider his effect on and place in society. Of course, the Joker's contributions to the Batman franchise aren't all positive. The brand has a tendency to fall back on the Joker as a central villain when it wants to tell an expansive story or one with heavier themes. This is kind of a shame, considering that Batman's rogues gallery is one of the best in comics, and there are often really good villains who might be a better fit for a particular storyline. The Ventriloquist, for instance, is a recurring Batman villain that had a breakdown after a lifetime of trauma and hardship. In order to get by in what he believes to be an exceptionally cruel world, he invented a personality for a puppet named Scarface and uses it to gain power and respect in the criminal underworld. While the Ventriloquist is somehow an even goofier villain than the Joker, he did snap under the weight of his poor lot in life, and could provide a new avenue to pursue whether society is worth saving or not. The Joker's massive popularity has also led to a kind of oversaturation in the character. There are almost too many versions of the character to keep track of, and besides a clown aesthetic and an affinity for the color purple, the different versions of the Joker don't have a lot in common. Each take on the Joker has motivations and abilities that are unique enough that could practically be a brand new character. Keeping track of each different version of the Joker is exhausting, considering how little we've seen of Batman's other terrific foes. We still don't even know how this new Joker movie is going to fit into the DC cinematic universe, or if this undoes the version of the character that appeared in Suicide Squad, for that matter. Sure, audiences aren't exactly losing quality content if Warner Brothers just fades out Jared Leto's forehead tattoo Joker and we pretend that whole debacle never happened. But it's still weird that a unique take on the most iconic villain in comics is seemingly being erased. Joaquin Phoenix's take on the Joker may even be a one-off take of the character that doesn't appear in any other DC films, which would even further muddle the character's history and make it even more difficult for casual fans to get more into Batman media without needing an encyclopedia to keep everything straight. All in all, though, the Joker had a positive effect on the comic book industry and the comic-related media. Not only is the Joker instantly recognizable to anyone with even a general awareness of comics, but he's also present in some of the best storylines in the world of comics. The success of the Joker as a character also paved the way for many strange and bizarre characters that would appear in superhero stories in the decades to follow. Comic book stories are inherently weird, but they weren't quite as out there in the 1940s as they are today. The Joker's premiere as an erratic yet hyper-competent criminal with a prominent clown motif opened the floodgates for even more peculiar and far-out characters to appear in later comics. Even if he is now overused, the Joker made and continues to make people read comics and see comic book movies and TV shows. Jack Nicholson's performance as the Joker in the 1989 Batman movie defined the character for decades, and the movie paved the way for the franchise to be taken seriously in cinema. The late Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker in The Dark Knight is arguably the best in his tragically short career, and he made the movie so incredible that many were shocked that the film didn't receive a Best Picture nomination in the 81st Academy Awards. The most striking example of how well-known the Joker is in mainstream culture and how much the character popularized Batman comics comes from the animated and video game versions of the character. At this point in his career, Mark Hamill is equally known for his portrayal of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, as he is for voicing the Joker in Batman the Animated Series.
It's true, Batsy. I know everything.
Several spin-off animated projects, and the Batman Arkham series of games. We don't really know much about Joaquin Phoenix's Joker film coming in October, but we can say with certainty that he will oppose and perhaps even emerge from whatever Batman or another figure of righteousness believes to be morally good actions. That's what the Joker is more than anything else. A chaotic and destructive force that tries and fails to bring down whatever good things a particular version of Batman is meant to embody. It'll certainly be strange to see the Joker as the main subject and protagonist of a film, but strangeness is what made the Joker a great villain in the first place, and hopefully it makes for a great film on October 4th. How do you think the Joker origin movie is going to fit in the broader DC cinematic universe? Do you even think Batman is going to appear in the film? Let us know in the comments down below, and while you're down there, subscribe to Behind the Screen for upcoming theories, character breakdowns, and other fun videos about your favorite films and shows.